And welcome back to episode 2 of a podcast about movies. And in case you haven't heard enough about Spider-Man, get ready to hear some more. I am here with my co-host Austin Pez Howell. Austin, how's it going?
Hey man, how are you? Yeah, it sounds cliche, but we talked a little Spider-Man last time, but now that we've both seen it, much like last time Jacob had not seen it yet, and it was a little early to talk spoilers. We were still at the time we recorded it, it was literally like the day it was opening, so we wanted to give everybody a chance to go out and see it. And apparently, according to the box office, $250 million, second biggest opening of all time, second only to Endgame. I think everybody pretty much did see it, or at least anybody that is watching this probably is a good chance you saw it, statistically speaking.
Right.
So, yeah, we'll talk about only the biggest movie on the planet right now, definitely.
Yeah. Anyone who cares has seen it at this
Yeah,
point.
well, and it's one of those things where everybody's like, don't spoil it, and that's fine. I mean, we most people are pretty cool about respecting things like that, but it just brings up a funny side tangent whenever you hear like, it's like, we're 22 years past or whatever, stuff like The Sixth Sense, and it's like, all right, listen, if you're an adult and let's say you're in your 30s or 40s, and at this point, if you have not seen that movie or bothered to see it at this point, that's on you, not on me, whether I talk about that movie freely. Because if you haven't bothered to just see things as readily available as they are, beyond a certain point, I don't know. What do you think? What do you think's like the thing where, as a pop culture, we could talk about a big twist in a movie openly? What do you think? Like 5 years? 5, 6 years? A couple years down the road. I mean, with the advent nowadays of streaming and the way things are kind of open information, I'd say 5 years. If you haven't seen it by the 5 year mark, I think that's more on you than everybody else. Then you weren't that interested in the first place, Jacob.
Right. Like that's plenty generous, I think.
Yeah.
A week after, we're going to give you a warning that there will be spoilers when we
Yeah,
talk
well,
about
yeah, and I
Spider-Man.
don't mind giving warnings for stuff like this, but if we're into 20, let's say 2025, 2026, and you're going, oh, please don't spoil Spider-Man No Way Home for me, as they're doing Avengers 7 and Spider-Man 6, things like that. It's like, that's on you at this point. But for now, we'll be fair, and yes, we're going to talk about spoilers for Spider-Man No Way Home. So if you have not seen it, we understand it's only been about a week as of this recording. Please tune out and come back later. But we're going to talk full on spoilers. Jacob's been itching ever since I teased him ever so slightly throughout the show last time of things here and there, and I was just pinching him, with all these little teases throughout the show.
Yes, and the movie did not disappoint. In fact, I liked the movie so much I saw it the very next day again.
Nice.
So
I wanted to do that. Literally, just my schedule would not allow it. So I've only seen it the once so far, but believe me, I've watched enough discussions and other things online that like everything's still very fresh. So, but yeah, I'm glad you were able to see it twice. That's a lot of fun.
yeah, and the emotion was still there the second time. Definitely, it was just as enjoyable the second time as it was the first, and maybe even better. Like I feel like this is one of those movies for me personally that's going to get better the more I watch it. And so yeah, let's just jump into it. The movie starts off with Peter and MJ literally where we left off in Far From Home.
Yeah, we jump right into it.
And I think that was a smart decision. I don't think you I don't think you could backtrack and talk about like, all right, so this is where we are, this is where we left off, and this is what happened in between. I think we needed to see it, and I think that was a very smart decision.
There's a really there's a really nice, it's a very subtle small moment that's so indicative of our culture now, with everybody having a cell phone, in their pocket and being able to record everything, where literally the news gets out and the people in their immediate area all like quickly just whip out their phones, oh, there he is, hey,
Right.
Peter Parker, because everybody can get the thing right on their phones. But there's one person that, like, as they're starting to like mob him and MJ, and he's just trying to like web away, and get out of there. They're like, one person's like, "Oh my goodness, he touched me! I'm gonna sue you, Spider-Man. He touched me." It's such
He
a
hit me.
like,
He hit me.
yeah, he hit. Did you see that? Did you see it? Like,
Yeah.
that's such a thing now. I think of just like, oh my god, he brushed against me. That's assault. Like, as if he singled you out and shoved you away. As if, just trying to walk away. Like, I just thought that was just a funny, little observation of how quickly, things can kind of spiral out of control. It's like everybody mobs you, but you assaulted them. Yeah, no, of course.
Right. Yeah. And so yeah, we jump in there and we see them, fly back to his aunt's apartment, their apartment, and
Hmm.
there's Happy Hogan portrayed perfectly once again by John
Hmm.
Favreau. I really enjoyed him in this movie. I don't think we saw too much of him. I think we saw just enough. Um,
Yeah, I wish they had dropped one or two extra lines though about like what it was that triggered the breakup between Happy and Aunt May, because they don't really get into it super hardcore, just that like it wasn't clicking, or it just wasn't working, or maybe Happy, wasn't giving her enough time. I don't know, whatever it was, or maybe he thought he was moving too fast or something. They only kind of, kick it here every now and then. But yeah, it's still, at least gives it a little bit extra kick, a little emotional thing that we don't need to see every moment, but it adds another dynamic for when if, again, spoiler alert, when she passes away later,
yeah,
that it's an extra kick even for him, because we've all had that thing where it's like there's a breakup, but you still care about the person. If something were to happen to them, it's not like,
yeah,
oh, Joe, well, serves her right. We break up or what. No, it's like you never want to see that happen. But yeah, I
right.
wish they gotten into it just a tad more. Maybe there's a deleted scene or two when the Blu-ray comes out. Maybe a couple of extra things, but yeah, we get enough. We get enough of where
Yeah.
it's at.
Uh, and then I was like, at first I was like, is that going to be all we see of Happy? And then
Right.
thankfully,
Yeah.
thankfully it wasn't, because he's kind of necessary in the movie.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I they use his condo, his condominium, as Doc Ock would call it later on in the movie.
Kind of their headquarters, yeah, throughout the
Right.
movie, yeah, their safe house, sort of, but yeah.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the aspect of the movie that it really reminded us that Peter Parker is still a kid.
Hmm.
And I think they tackled that really well in like the first half of this movie. Um, with the college admissions,
Hmm.
and the fact that they didn't get in, and something if something goes wrong in a teenager's life, their first thought is, "Oh my gosh, my life is over." I'm gonna
Right, yeah, and
I'm gonna
it's such a thing
overreact.
of, well, especially now when I'm literally, you see all these like, he's supposed to be, what, 18, ish, in these
Yeah,
movies, and I'm pretty much double his age now, and I'm like, kid, you don't know shit yet about life, and what kind of curveballs can get thrown your way, and what kind of adulting you have to do later. Like, yeah, if you think that, oh, I didn't get into this particular college, I had to settle for another college, that's like the least of your worries. Like, at this point, like, you never know what you're going to be in for, what life's going to deal you. And even your passions might change. There's people who go to college and they drop out and it's not for them and they just want to work, or they just find another passion in life, and they just figure out that their plan that they think that is going to be this perfect life just either doesn't work out, or you just want to change it. And it's just
right.
not for you. Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't know I wanted to work in childcare until I started working in childcare. So yeah, I mean, I
Yeah. Yeah.
totally get that. So yeah, I think, yeah, like I said, I think they really did a good job of reminding us that even though he has saved the world,
Yeah.
he is still just a kid, and he still is dealing with those, teenage, young adult decisions. And sometimes we don't, we even us when we were young adults, we didn't always handle them the right way. So,
Mm-hmm.
um, and I think that that's kind of a trend throughout the movie, as we see. Maybe he should have just let the villains go back.
Yeah, you get a little overly ambitious, when you're
Yeah,
young like that, and maybe you need to. It's another thing of becoming older is you get a little more, or excuse me, I should say, a little less optimistic and a little more realistic as
right.
to the way things probably need to go down. And yeah, he's very optimistic about what he can do. With these characters and their interactions, but yeah, the more and more he gets bogged down in this thing, it's like, yeah, maybe we should have just hit that button immediately and just kind of moved on and not gotten so ambitious. Yeah, and none of this would have happened.
Right. But he doesn't, because Aunt May likes to help people, and I think that has passed on to Peter, and I think that's an admirable thing. But as we see, it's not always the best decision, even though sometimes it might seem like the right decision. Um, Sometimes, it's all about what if. But
What
obviously,
if and the greater good,
yeah,
is a certain thing, is it would it have been, just the right decision to, like, Doctor Strange is talking about, or is it Doctor Strange? We'll talk about that later too. There's a few people that posited that it's not Doctor Strange, but
Mhm.
yeah, if is he right about, the fact that everybody has their own fate and you can't change that fate no matter how much you want to, and or should you? It even goes back to stuff like Back to the Future, knowing somebody's destiny. Is it your job to change that? Should you change that? And how things can get thrown into chaos when you start to try to make everything perfect or fix everything, as opposed to just letting the universe kind of play itself out as it should have in the first place.
Yeah. I so let's talk about the villains, because
Hmm.
man, was this a nostalgia trip. I
Yeah,
loved seeing them back. You know, and you knew they were coming back, but even still seeing their arrival on the big screen was just like,
yeah,
oh my goodness. I'm not one to like burst out into applause in the theater, but I
sure.
almost did. I almost did.
Well, I mean, and it was like I was telling you when I told you that I think a lot of people expected everybody to just have maybe these quick scenes, drop a couple of nostalgic lines, maybe have a fight scene, and then be out of the movie. And
Yeah.
when I told you, I was like, okay, I'll just say this. I won't spoil anything, but, again, this is going back to last week. These characters have a lot more to do in this movie than you think they do. And it's true
Yes.
because half an hour into the movie, these villains start showing up and they hang around for like the whole movie. And there's interactions and they have little subplots. And the same thing with eventually Toby and Andrew. Like, they don't just pop in for a cameo, like, they are parts of the movie. They are supporting characters, not just cameos. And that was the biggest thing that I think surprised me going into the movie, and why so many people were so happy with what they got. Is it wasn't just Doc Ock comes in and rambles for a minute about something and then he gets sucked back into his world. It's like a 2 minute scene and then he goes back. Like, he's all these characters are parts of the movie. Like, they have things to do, which is cool, and
Hmm.
they interact with each other, and the ones that how they interact with each other. I loved all the stuff where you if you remember the timeline of events, it's like Norman would only know Otto before he had the arms. So he'd be like, Otto, oh, they would know each other. He'd be like, oh, hey, Otto, like, what are those things attached to your thing? Like, he wouldn't know about the
Yeah.
arms because he died before that. And then vice versa with Otto would know about Norman, but he's like, but you died. So how are you here right now? Maybe they were friends at some point. And it's seeing those interactions and it's like, oh, yeah, that's right. They would have at this point, maybe
Hmm.
known each other, but it was before this person was a villain or after this person was a villain, or yeah, it'd be post that person's death, that sort of thing. So it's really fun, those kind of subtle character interactions, if you know the movies that well.
Hmm. And part of me was thinking maybe they're gonna leave Venom out because we have Venom now.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe he'll surprise us as a villain. I'm glad they didn't like add Venom in as one of the past villains coming back, because we do have Tom Hardy now. I thought that was a smart decision. I think that maybe that would have caused
Well,
the
I thought
Spider-Man
for
3
half a
syndrome.
second we would have seen Spider-Man 3 Venom with what's his name, not
Yeah,
Mark
Topher
Ellis.
Grace.
Yeah, Topher Grace, and because they talked about how the people coming in knew that Peter was Spider-Man. Well, Topher Grace knew Peter Parker was Spider-Man at the end of that movie.
Right. Right.
He was very well aware of that. So, and not necessarily that you had to have him go full Venom, but maybe, see him, come through, maybe see some veins on his head or something like that, and kind of maybe even just in and out. Yeah, I could have been one of the quicker ones, but I wondered, hey, I mean, as much as people kind of crap on that, I just wondered if he would have come in and out, even quickly as that Venom, even just for a minute.
Yeah. I think they definitely chose the right Spider-Man 3
Mm.
villain, in my opinion. Sandman, he was a good villain, because he wasn't really he was a villain that you understood. You
He's a
understood why
reluctant
he
villain.
was doing,
He's a guy who does villainous things, but he doesn't have like some of these villains, or he's not out to like kill people. He's not out to do crazy things to take over the world. He's literally just he's robbing banks to get money, for his kid. He's doing this, that, and the other for his kid, which to me made it a little weird where he would be the one out of the most that just wants to go home, and he makes that clear, that like he doesn't really care about what's going on. He just wants to get back to his world so he can go see his kid, and continue his quest or whatever to get back to being a human and seeing his kid. So he's still, like, even in his intentions, the least villainous of that aspect. He never really was. If you go back and watch Spider-Man 3, he's still not really a villain, even when he's a villain.
right.
And yeah, and he's still alive at the end of that movie. So he's one of the ones that doesn't die or isn't fated to die.
Right. So I got a question. Which of these villains were you, before seeing the movie, were you most excited to see, and then afterwards, like uh, 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 which one do you think benefited the most from
Okay.
coming back?
No, I know what your answer. Okay, so the one I think benefited the most from this movie in context of making their other movie look better was Jamie Foxx's Electro, because he's way better in this movie than he was in that movie, and I think he's more level headed in this one. He's more cool. I just like the way it turns. Where he's just gone full on, like, I'm just accepting what I am and I like it, that sort of thing. And he's just kind of suave. I think he benefits the most from this movie in looking back on his movie. The one I was most excited to see, and I'm so glad he just epitomizes everything about what Goblin should be, is Willem Dafoe as Green Goblin. He was awesome. I thought he absolutely stole the show again, as Norman Osborn, and we get exactly what we wanted all along, ever since he was in that original movie. Is like, he don't need that mask, dude. Like, he's weird enough
Right. Yeah.
looking, and he can make those, those faces, like those big smiles and the big teeth and everything. Like, he can contort his face, into those goofy, weird, and he does plenty of it in this movie. It's like, that guy don't need a mask, dude. He is a goblin. Like, he just is. And when he finally comes in later in the movie, where he's just got, like, they kind of give him that hoodie that sort of looks like the old cartoon series, the purple and stuff,
Yep.
and all that, and like kind of pulls it tight. Like, I'm like, that's all you need for him as Goblin. He can just do his weird faces and his laughs and his voice, and like that's it, man. Like, and he still got it. I thought he was awesome. He stole everything he was in.
Yeah, for sure. I think my answers are going to be the same.
Mm,
I thoroughly enjoyed Jamie Foxx a lot more in this movie than I did
mm,
in The Amazing Spider-Man 2. It's not to say I didn't like his performance in The Amazing Spider-Man 2. I thought he was one of the better parts, once he turns into Electro,
mm,
in that movie. But yeah, man, he's a lot cooler.
mm.
And just the way he looks, his line delivery, just so much better. I think he definitely benefited the most. I think people are going to remember his character a lot more fondly now, that they have this
Yeah,
version to look back on as well. But I think for me, I was most excited to see Doc Ock.
sure.
And then I was surprised at how they handled him. I did not think he would be the first one to turn good.
Mm.
Um, Although looking back, I think it does make the most sense. I thought maybe it
Well,
would
it
be
makes no
Sandman.
sense because it was, especially when they go back to that thing, you forget about that chip, that he had originally. In Spider-Man 2, he had that inhibitor chip where he had the arms, but he wasn't. He was literally just using them as a tool, and he controlled
Mhm.
every aspect of them. And he didn't start hearing the crazy voices, and they didn't start taking over his brain till that thing was till broken. So like when they're able to fix it, and he goes back to being good, that makes sense because he's like, I love the moment where they first do it, where he's like, it's quiet. Oh my gosh, it's quiet. Like I haven't heard this
Mhm.
quiet, in ages, of just like there's no voices in his head anymore. Like he's in full control, and you can tell he's just so relieved that it's just him and his thoughts. And Alfred Molina is so good about like turning that on. Like he turns on a dime. Like you can see it click in his head in his performance when he goes from being corrupted by these voices to having clarity again. And he's so good with that in the movie. He's his. I think he's another one who just slides right back into the role, and the guy
Mhm.
hasn't aged much. I mean, he looks the same. Willem Dafoe honestly looked almost the same. Like they both looked great. And they just slid right back into these roles, like right where you could watch Spider-Man and Spider-Man 2 and this movie right back to back, and you probably wouldn't even know the difference, honestly. Like they slide right back into it pretty flawlessly.
Yeah. No, I expected good performances. I didn't expect Willem Dafoe to give a great
Yeah,
performance. Like if the Academy enjoyed superhero movies,
sure. Yeah.
best supporting actor, I mean, I'd give it to him. I thought he was absolutely fantastic. And yeah, the way he was able to turn it from, I'm somewhat of a scientist myself to
Oh yeah. I popped for that
we're
line,
gonna
by the way. I was like, oh
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
that's a great callback. If you catch it, it's a great callback.
Yes. Um yeah, so to go from that and then to just like turn it on, like, oh my
Yeah.
goodness, like I cannot say enough good things about his performance. And then the action scenes that he was a part of were just
Hmm.
incredible. That fight when he turns back, um, oh my goodness, that's
All that fight is brutal. You feel the violence in this movie. I felt like when they're slamming each other around like really hard and really pounding on each other, like the movie gets more and more like it starts out again. The early action scenes are still very Spider-Man, kind of very MCU, little cartoony. But when the mood starts to change in the movie, and you start to feel it around that scene where Defoe goes back to being Goblin, and like it's the movie starts to get brutal more physically and emotionally around that time, and
mhm.
and you kind of feel it takes a turn, but in a way that is needed because I feel like Tom Holland, this is the first movie where, and again this whole movie is about him. He's no longer and it's not to be me, he's no longer Spider Boy, he's Spider-Man by the end of this movie.
Yes.
He has yet to, this is the one where he has to finally grow up, and he's got to
Mhm.
be a man, and he takes a turn in his life, and he's finally going through, people talk about, I've heard of this in a lot of the other spoiled discussions. Spider-Man kind of has to be miserable. That's sort of how the character is. He
Mhm.
has to go through some personal strife. He has to have some tragedy in his life, much like Batman. He has to have those family member deaths and tragedies, and he has to be kind of alone and kind of miserable. That's what Spider-Man is. With great power comes great responsibility, and they finally get work that into this movie. We'll talk about that soon when Toby and Andrew show up. But you have to have that Spider-Man where he's troubled, where he's by himself, where he's got to figure things out and become a man, and he's no longer this carefree teenager. He's now moved into adulthood in this movie, which is again, I was so glad that that's what Tom Holland, and he portrays that very very well. That it's one of those movies that, like I said, it puts the other two movies in context when you know that that's what it's building up to, and he's
Mhm.
building up to this. He's finally just the other movies had the tragedy in the first movie, so they kind of went through that already. But this, the Aunt May death is his finally his Uncle Ben,
Yeah.
tragic moment where he feels like it was his fault or he could have done more. And that's what Spider-Man has to be burdened with. He has to be burdened with regret and guilt over things that he does, as Spider-Man, and all of his friends being in danger and everything. And that's part of the Spider-Man character.
Yeah, and I think the Aunt May death, it hits a little harder because we've gotten to know this character. She's been
Mhm.
in 3 movies, uh,
Yeah.
the 3.5,
Three and
really
a
with
half.
us
Yeah.
with Civil War, but
Yeah.
it's a very
Yeah.
very small role. But we've gotten to know this character where
Yeah.
Uncle Ben, is a 1 movie, and
Well, yeah, like Cliff Robertson in the first Spider-Man movie, you get a couple of scenes, maybe a half an hour screen time before they do his death, outside of the library and all that. And yeah, I mean, but don't get me wrong, he does a lot in that time. You do kind of understand the character,
yeah, yeah.
and the death comes out of nowhere. Then they have little flashbacks here and there in the later movies, but yeah, I mean, the fact that we've been with this character for a couple of movies and not just a half an hour at the beginning, hour at the beginning, things like that.
Hmm.
Um, as opposed to Cliff Robertson and Martin Sheen subsequently. So, yeah, we've been with this character, and granted, I wasn't really like shedding a tear per se, but it was definitely, the performances were great. I thought the scene was pretty pitch perfect, where
Hmm.
she, you have that. It was so real to life too. About, you see these people where something happens and your adrenaline is still going, that you're just like, oh, I'll just give me a second, I just need to walk it off, I'm good. I'm good.
Hmm.
And then it's like, no, I'm not good. Like, there's something wrong. And when you see the blood, it's like, no, she's got like internal injuries, like she's
Yeah,
going down. But your adrenaline is so much that you think you're okay, and you're just like, oh, I just need a minute to catch my breath. And that slow realization that Tom Holland has, that she's not okay, and this is it.
hmm
And even she has that realization. It's like, well, damn, like, I guess I better get my goodbyes out, because this is it. And it's pretty rough, man, because he has to
it
turn that on
is.
right away, and he has to deal with the fact right then that he didn't save her, and he's going to lose her, and he's got to face that. And it's not that she gets killed off screen; she dies pretty much in his arms.
Hmm.
Unlike the other movies where Uncle Ben, um, granted, Toby kind of had Uncle Ben dying in his arms, but he wasn't there for the thing. It was kind of the aftermath. But yeah, like, the fact that she's right then and there and she goes, man, that's rough. It's a rough scene, but everybody does a great job with it.
Yeah, the moment she like fell back down, my theater
Hmm.
both times just went silent. Like,
Right.
and it's one of those moments. And so kind of building off that, I liked that the movie in the beginning, it was very much bright, but
Hmm.
once Willem Dafoe turns, and like after this, the movie's dark.
Well,
Like,
it's
it's
like
just,
a cloud rolled in, and
yeah.
it's, yeah, and again with his character also, it's a subtle thing, but the hood comes up and covers the face. It's like a literal change of the character,
Hmm.
and he casts a dark cloud, over the film, literally, that like he's got to break out of, and yeah, the movie physically even looks darker, and it just feels, yeah, like we've taken this turn. Into kind of going into that third act, and it's like, yeah, it's not bright, chipper Spider-Man anymore. Like, some shit's going down, and things just got real. Like, quote Bad Boys 2, shit just got real. And yeah, and Tom's he's out for vengeance. For the first time in any of these movies, he wants revenge. He wants vengeance, and we see that, and the fact that we need to, that it's a perfect time, when they do it in the movie, to then bring in, Toby and Andrew, which is what we get kind of around that same time
Yeah,
with the portals they pull them in.
with the portals that Ned
And
brings.
Ned, dude, yeah,
Yeah, I'm curious to see if they go anywhere with that. Just as a
we'll
side note,
see.
like if they
Yeah,
go anywhere with that. But yeah, no, seeing Toby and Andrew back, because I didn't dislike Andrew Garfield as
I didn't
Spider-Man and
either.
Peter
I thought he was
Parker.
great. Yeah,
So
he's awesome.
yeah, seeing them back, and I'm glad they didn't try to like de-age Toby Maguire to make him look like
Yeah, no.
Spider-Man. When I like that it was older Peter Parker, because I think it makes that meeting between Doc Ock and Peter at the end of the movie so much
Hmm.
better. Like, so Yeah, seeing them was
Andrew
really
also, much
cool.
like Jamie Foxx, Andrew benefits a lot from this movie too.
Mm-hmm.
I think people are going to go back and look at those movies differently as well because he's so good in this movie. I think Andrew almost steals the show as on the Spider-Man side. I think he steals the movie even more than Toby. Honestly, I
Mm-hmm.
think he gets. Yeah, a lot of people I think are going to come out of this one really surprised and going like, "Wow, like I really like he's really good." I mean, you saw it online. People are now like, "You know what? That Amazing Spider-Man 3. You know, can we maybe get that
Yeah.
going here? Like, I'd be down for it because you could do it without interfering with what's going on now. Just have it jump back to his timeline, and you could do a whole separate movie that doesn't really interfere with it. Again, you're in the multiverse now, so you can do these movies that are separate but could connect. But
Right.
because of the multiverse concept, it doesn't have to interfere with anything we've seen before. It can just exist in its own world and do it. But he benefits a lot from this movie, man. We'll talk about it in a minute. But when he gets his moment of redemption in the movie, when he saves Zendaya, and
Mm-hmm.
it's a callback to him actually to what he didn't get to do in Amazing Spider-Man 2, and you can see this look on his face that he gets. Like it's something, man. Like he gives a hell of a performance. Like, and Andrew
Yeah,
Garfield, people forget that dude's a great actor.
he
Like
is. He
like he's
really is.
awesome. I mean, I love him in The Social Network. Like he's done a bunch of independent movies. Like he's a great actor, and you can see like he knows what he's doing, man. He's not
Yeah.
just a former Spider-Man. Like dude knows how to work.
No, yeah, I've never been disappointed by a performance of his.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. So yeah, we see them again, and then we go to the rooftop. Are they on the rooftop of the school? Is that where
Yeah,
they are?
that was
Yeah.
one weird thing about this movie. They try to say that Peter always came here to like think, but he didn't. That was just kind of something they introduced in this movie, and it's just kind of shoehorned because we just needed a spot where he goes to think. But really, the only time we've ever seen it was at the beginning of this movie.
Right.
It's not in those other movies, so it's one of those weird kind of shoehorned things. But that's fine. I can roll with it. But yeah, like that scene is amazing because yeah, you get kind of all three of them dishing on their own sort of hardships that they've had to deal with. You get a little more about Toby reflecting on his Uncle Ben and the fact that Tom Holland's just like, who's this Uncle Ben guy? Because we haven't encountered an Uncle Ben in the
Right.
MCU, and they have like, and they're just saying, no, no, like this is my guy, my Aunt May, tragedy that you just dealt with. Like we each went through that. Andrew Garfield even more because he had the Gwen Stacy thing too. Because Toby still has MJ. MJ's
Right.
still alive, with
Yeah.
them, and they're together. But Andrew Garfield is truly like he drops the line where he's like, at some point I just had to forget the Peter Parker stuff and just embrace Spider-Man. I don't have time for that anymore. Like he's fully Spider-Man. He has no personal life whatsoever, and he's resorted to that because anybody he's ever loved, has been either killed or he can't interact with them because he puts them in danger. He's the most tragic out of the three. And when you do that, it puts his movie again in a whole nother context. And you're just like, man, like that sucks, man. You can see it in Garfield's eyes. I guess that goes to his performance. You can see it in his eyes. He's like, he still is grateful that he's Spider-Man and he can help people, but you can tell he's been through the ringer almost more than anybody.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think the emotion they were able to portray in this movie was just it was top notch, like
Mm-hmm.
performance wise. Like I don't shed tears very often in movies. I do get emotional, like
Mm-hmm.
especially if it's characters I'm invested in, like Spider Man. Um, and I was close just listening to the dialogue. Like they just delivered
Mm-hmm.
it in such a way that you could feel the emotion.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that's like I don't mean to harp on it, but I wish the Academy appreciated superhero movies more because I think
Yeah.
some of the better performances have been in superhero movies. But that's a discussion for another time. Right now, we're
Hmm.
talking Spider Man. Um,
Maybe one day we can do a topic of performances in superhero movies or villain or whatever comic book movies that should have gotten more recognition, from like an academy. Maybe we can do that as
right.
a topic one day
So
and kind of go back through and be like, this performance, set aside the fact that it's a comic book movie or whatever, like should have. Like this performance is damn good,
Mm-hmm.
and if it wasn't, and it was the same thing for me. I'm a horror guy, and the
Yeah.
Oscars don't like horror movies either. You see Toni Collette in Hereditary, and you go, no, that's an Oscar performance, and then
Yes.
she's like, and it's nothing. You know what I mean? Like, come on, stuff like that. Where that's what pisses me off as a horror fan. Much like sometimes it pisses people off as comic book fans. This person is good regardless of the surrounding movie or what genre it is or whatever. Like this stuff is
Right.
solid, and just because it's a horror movie or a comic movie, whatever it is, or even science fiction to a degree, we just can't recognize it because it's not a dramatic period piece Oscar film or some independent festival darling drama. You know what I mean? Like just
Right.
because it's not that, we can't recognize it. Yeah, no, I totally agree with that.
Yeah. I loved where we went next in the movie. Seeing the three of them working together
Oh,
in the
this stuff is
lab.
just fun. Just them
It's,
hanging
yeah.
out and being science nerds that we forget sometimes that Peter Parker is a nerd, and they're all three of them are, and the fact that Toby, was a science nerd in that movie, and Andrew Garfield was going to Oscorp, he was a science nerd too, like yeah, and they're all just nerding out and just being science kids, like which is kind of going back, and maybe I think they even just the characters were having fun, just kind of doing sciencey things with each other, and just being in
Mm-hmm.
a lab and playing around, and they're all finding out about each other's backstories. Oh wait, you fought a weirdo guy like that. We're talking about the villains that they fought and some of the interactions that they've had in their own universes. You fought an alien, I fought one in space. You fought one in space. Shit like just like you've been to space. Like
Yeah.
holy shit, that sort of thing. Like I just fought a guy in a big dumb rhino outfit. You guys have fought space aliens. All that kind of stuff was like, yeah, all those interactions. I wanted a whole movie of just that, just got them
Right.
trading stories at a dinner table with each other, about their Spider-Man adventures. That would have been fun. Like you would get a little bit of that, but yeah, I could see a whole movie of just that.
And I'm glad they went there because it would have been really easy to just keep going with like the aftermath of Aunt May's death and just
We
keeping
needed
it
some
heavy. But
levity. This
we
scene is necessary. We need a little bit of levity before we get back into some heavier stuff at the end. Like we need them just hanging out and bullshitting with each other and trading stories and it also helps us kind of catch up on where the characters are and what they've been up to, because it's heavily implied that Toby's still doing his Spider-Man thing. He's older, but he's still doing his thing. Garfield again still doing his thing, but he just doesn't have a personal life really. He's just
Mhm.
Spider-Man, kind of loner Spider-Man. Toby still has Kirsten Dunst presumably in his life, and yeah, but this scene is just fun, and them just trading shit back and forth. I tell you where I popped was when he was doing the whole like you gonna go dressed as a youth pastor, sort of thing or whatever, but are you gonna suit up, and he just does the subtle like he pulls
Yeah.
his shirt down a little bit and you see the suit and you're like, that's my boy. That's my boy right there. Still ready to go. You know what I mean? Like that's awesome. I
Yeah.
love that.
That was that was probably my favorite line in the movie outside
Oh
of
yeah,
outside of the callback to I'm something of a scientist and with great
yeah.
power, and those two lines did give I popped a little bit, but that line just like yeah, because I go to church and I work with a youth group, and I'm like, yep, that's it's definitely
even if
definitely
you
true.
even if you're not a church person, you get that reference because you've
Yeah.
seen those people on TV or whatever, or pictures of things online. Like, yeah, it's a pretty good little reference. And Toby in this movie, to be fair, kind of does dress like one of those 50-year-old guys who's trying to dress young, as a youth pastor, trying to be hip like the kids.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So give us your thoughts on the final fight scene. I
Yeah.
thought so.
It's
I
it's
thought it
it's
was
no, you got you first,
okay.
and I'll get mine.
Yeah, I thought it was paced perfectly. I don't think they rushed anything, and just the back and forth and between the Spider-Man. Like, yeah, they're not going to work together pretty well at first, but they were able to click. And man, I don't know how you felt, but when the three of them after they regroup and they land on top of the Statue of Liberty, Man, I almost want to just like take my phone out, grab a screenshot, and just like
yeah, right.
that moment for me was just seeing the three of them. Like that's when it was like, oh my goodness, we've got the spider people together, and this is
Yeah,
great.
it's
And like,
surreal. Yeah, it's surreal. Yeah, and yeah, and like I even like the little moments though when they realize they have to work together, and it's like because Toby always worked by himself. Andrew Garfield worked by himself. Though Spider-Man for the most part kind of does fights these battles where he's got to fight the Sinister Six by himself, or whatever, and he's juggling all stuff. But he's like, but Tom Holland's like, no, I've been part of a team, and I love that they don't know who the Avengers are. That's a fun little side note too. They're like, the Avengers. What is it? A rock? What are you in a band? Like, what, and they're just like, no, there's a group of us. Never mind. I'll explain it later. And because they don't know who the Avengers are, they're like, okay, cool, whatever. But yeah, they've got to work together as a team and come up with a strategy. And yeah, it's fun. I mean, watching kind of a 3-on-3 fight with like the Spider-Man versus Lizard and Electro and Sandman and stuff. Like, it's all fun, and they're out there to cure their asses, not kick their asses, which is a lot of fun too. Let's go cure some ass. Like, all that stuff is a lot of fun. I think the only villain, Harbati, that doesn't really, it didn't do anything to rectify how still kind of lame he is, was Rice Ifans, Lizard. He gets the least to do in this movie, and he didn't really do anything to really turn me around on that. The only real fun part he gets is he's just like, I could help too, and they're like, well, help how? You want to turn everybody into lizards again? Like, is that how you're gonna help everybody? It's like, oh, it was a good plan. That sort of thing. Just whatever. He's still set on that thing, but yeah, he doesn't get a lot to do, but it's okay because he wasn't the best villain in the first place anyways.
right.
So it's fine. But what are you gonna do?
Right. So yeah, it worked. It just worked, and I liked that Jamie Foxx. I liked that Electro was the last villain before Willem Dafoe comes back, and he was the last villain standing, because he was more powerful. He definitely was, and there was a moment where I was like, oh, is he gonna win? Like, they really got me thinking, that is he gonna win? And I had completely forgotten about Doc Ock. I'm gonna be honest. I completely forgot. I was like, all right,
I
well,
kind of always had that in the back of my head that he was going to be the guy who comes in for the save at the end, for the hot tag. He was going to pop back up because you knew he had turned back good at that point, and I had a feeling he was going to pop in at some point and give him a boost. That they were going to be down, and he was going to come in and do his thing. But it's still fun to see somebody, you always enjoy a good villain on villain fight too, which we don't get a lot in movies, but like I have like Doc Ock fighting Electro, is fun, to have him trying to grab at his thing, and they're hitting each other and knocking stuff away, and all that stuff. And I think he even gets one of the arms, mechanic arms, chopped off at one point, and like he goes down to 3. So they both get knocked around a little bit, but yeah, like all that stuff was fun. I enjoy a good villain on villain interaction as well. So all that stuff was pretty fun. But yeah, he's a good guy at heart. He's a scientist, and yeah, when he's in control, he doesn't want to be a bad guy. That's not who he is. We saw enough of that in Spider-Man 2 to where he's only a villain because he's corrupted literally in his brain by these other voices. So it's much like Norman Osborn too. He's also corrupted by this stuff that's in his system, that's in his brain. So yeah, but when he comes in at the end, you're like, you just feel it go up a notch because of A, what we've already seen, but B, that Dafoe can be so sadistic and sinister, as that Goblin. Like when he comes in, you're like, okay, now here we go. Like, and it was also fun to see, again, Toby interact, like you said, with Doc Ock and Green Goblin too, because those are his guys, and not try to, he doesn't want to kill Norman Osborn too, because he knows what Norman is, and he knows that he's corrupted as well, and Toby knows that, and when Tom Holland it's pretty brutal, and he's beating the shit out of Willem Dafoe, and he's ready to kill him. Like he's beating him badly. And when he goes to hit him with that glider, like you're just like, are they going to do it? But then they swerve me, and I was like, don't you dare kill Toby. Don't you dare kill Toby. When he gets stabbed, I
Oh
was like, oh
yes. I
no,
was
no,
like,
no, no,
no,
no, no.
what?
No, please don't do that. I was like, don't do that. But he brushes off, oh, I've been stabbed before, whatever, I'm good.
Yeah.
But I was like, don't you do it. Don't you toy with my emotions like that, movie. Don't you dare.
Yeah. No, I love that. It's brief, but that final fight between him and
Mhm.
between Tom Holland and Willem Dafoe, yeah,
Mhm.
it was brutal. And like I think Tom Holland and Willem Dafoe had really good chemistry in this movie, and I'd like to see them do something else outside of this and just see where it goes. But
Mhm.
no, I think, and then once Willem Dafoe is cured and he just he clicks back again, like
Mhm.
it's seamless. It's just such a great transition when he realizes what he's done.
Mhm.
Um, and yeah, and then they go back because Tom Holland, Peter Parker, decides to make such a sacrifice.
Yeah, the only way to cure it all is to do the spell he originally wanted, but you got to do it right. You got to do the full on, where yeah, he's basically a ghost now. He's a
Hmm.
ghost that doesn't even really exist. That Spider-Man exists, but Peter Parker doesn't exist. Yeah, he has to do the spell, and nobody knows who he is. MJ doesn't know who he is. Ned doesn't know who he is. The Avengers don't know who he is. When you think about the bigger context as well, Happy doesn't know who he is, and yeah, he's truly alone, much like you said in the Spider-Man in the comics, kind of is a lot of the times. He's truly alone when he's got the scene at the end, and even the thing where he's got the GED book because his school records don't exist. He does not exist.
Hmm.
He's got to just start his life over essentially, and just be anonymous, Peter Parker Spider Man. And my crowd did pop as well. It's not the same guy or anything, but you hear in the background somebody going, "Rent's due on the first rent," like
Yeah,
the whole rent
yeah,
thing. It was a nice little callback of like that was one of the funnier running gags in the first couple of Spider-Man movies with the guy who was always asking for rent across the hall. Yeah, that was always fun. So the fact that there's maybe a little bit to that'll be fun.
yeah.
Nice little joke. But yeah, it's a tough position that he's in, and he has a couple little moments with them, but decides that maybe he was all about, again in the beginning of the movie, um, benefiting helping Ned and MJ get where they need to go and make sure they're living a happy life, and he has to give the ultimate self-sacrifice and protect them, and if he has to be loner Spider-Man who doesn't have anybody to rely on, then that's what he has to do to keep everybody safe.
And I liked the line when Doctor Strange was talking to him,
Mm,
and he said, "Everyone that loves you, we won't remember." But they didn't put any emphasis on it. Nothing.
mm,
They could have made it a bigger deal. Like, no, Doctor
yeah.
Strange really does care about him. But I like that it was subtle enough that you could catch it. Um,
Hmm.
but because yeah, I mean, Doctor Strange and Spider Man in this movie didn't have they butted heads a few times. Um,
Yeah.
so um, so yeah, hearing that was pretty cool. It's kind of call me Steven,
Yeah.
and just because I think at the end of the day, he's still Doctor Strange understands that he's just a kid.
Right.
He's just a kid finishing high school, and he's been burdened with all this. Hey, let's save the world because with great power
Yeah.
comes
Yeah.
great responsibility. I love that moment between the two of them, and then the
Mhm.
moments between the Spider Man, and I really think I would love to see more like Toby and Andrew together.
Yeah.
Maybe if there's something.
Do like if there's somehow can do a multiverse buddy movie, yeah, as
Yeah.
buddy Spider-Man, yeah, because they're both just like, and they're similar actors in that they've both done these big franchise films, but then after that they've both just stuck to like these small movies, for the most part. We see a lot, Andrew Garfield just in
Mhm.
a lot of small kind of independent features. Same with Toby. Toby, doesn't do a whole lot of big blockbuster, ensemble films. He's stuck to kind of this. I mean, granted, he's got Spider-Man money. I think he did very well off those movies. He probably did. He probably is still seeing some residuals off of those, I'm sure, especially by the time they got to Spider-Man 2 and 3. So he's doing fine. He's not hurting. And apparently he's a very good poker player, and he's made a good living playing poker as well in his real life. So yeah, you can look up there's all kinds of stuff with him doing these poker tournaments, and he's very, very good. So kudos to good on him. But yeah, their interaction was so fun that even when they're just like hugging, and he's just like, "I love you, man." Like, I love you, man. And then they have the back stuff. They call back to the back. Oh, just I have this nagging back thing. Hey, you want me to crack it for you? I'll take care. And he's like, "No, you're amazing. You're really, really amazing."
I love that. Oh my, I love that.
Don't you sell yourself short. You're amazing. Yeah, all that stuff was just fun. Yeah, I thought their chemistry was spot on, and you could tell maybe those guys are friends in real life. Who knows? But yeah, like you could definitely feel something there. Yeah, I wouldn't be opposed to something like that.
No. Yeah, it just looked like they were having fun. So yeah, he gives them their goodbyes, and then he has to go give Ned and MJ the goodbye. And I really enjoyed Zendaya's performance in this movie. I thought she was fantastic. I think definitely her best performance of the trilogy was in this movie. I definitely think she's grown as a character, especially from that first movie where she was just kind of, this monotone.
Yeah, I didn't really like her in the first movie. I didn't click with it. But then again, I've made my thoughts known on that movie and the subsequent one that I'm not a huge fan of it. But again, if I go back now with this movie, I think if I was to, when it comes out on Blu-ray and stuff, if I was to sit down and marathon these movies, I think the actual long-term story would click really well. If you know where it's going,
right.
Maybe it would click a little bit more, which is fine. Sometimes we do put stuff like that in context. Much like this movie makes you want to go back and watch the Andrew Garfield movies, and you're like, man, I want to go back and watch those movies, man. He's really charming in this one. And honestly, he was from the beginning. Just those movies themselves had flaws that he couldn't quite overtake for some of them, but like he was never the problem with those movies, and he was always charming and fun. And I'm glad all these guys were kind of able to get a nice little epilogue to their stories. If we don't get any kind of official sequels, they were at least able to get another moment and have a nice button and kind of wrap everything up and remind everybody like how much these guys enjoyed, being Spider-Man and put their own little spin on it. And they're all different, but they're all fun. And you can latch on to whichever one you like. There's 3 different ones with 3 different performances. And yeah, like everybody has their own favorite, but they're all fun, and they can all coexist in this universe in their own little ways.
Yeah, I'm definitely still a Tom Holland fan. I think this performance just solidified it for me. But man, like it could be a 1A, 1B, 1C thing. Like
sure, right.
When it comes to picking a favorite, because while they're all playing Peter Parker, they're not playing the same Peter Parker, and they each give great performances in their own way. So I loved the end of the movie also, when he goes back to where MJ is working, and I was like, oh well, he's gonna introduce himself, and it's gonna set up the next Spider-Man movie maybe, and they don't do that, which I thought was a really good decision. He just kind of gets to see how they're doing. And I thought it was a great ending. I really did.
Well, I think it's just he's settled on the fact that again, he doesn't want anything to happen to them because he cares about them as people, and he can't lose them or put them in a situation. He's got to be selfless in that. He's got to let them live their lives at this point, and let them live their lives and be safe. Not to say he won't check in on them every now and then and make sure they're good or see what they're up to, like anybody would if they were in that situation, maybe kind of keep an eye on them, make sure nothing happens. But yeah, that's part of being Spider-Man, is you have to make those decisions about, that's what even at the end of the some of the Toby movies where he's like, we can't be together. You're in danger. If people know who you are and know you're with me, they can use that. And he has to make that decision of like, we can't do it. And now apparently, again, the lines are dropped that they did somehow make it work in his universe and they're still together. But there's always that conflict of like, there's that danger, and can we live with that if something were to happen or not? And maybe that's part of Tom Holland still being somewhat of a kid, is like, can I take another tragedy in my life if something were to happen to one of them? Probably not. That would probably be devastating. And he's been and Aunt May's thing is fresh on his mind, and he doesn't want that to happen again. So for right now, he's got to make the decision to just be alone and live his life, and just all he can do is again just try to keep do his own thing and keep everybody safe from a distance,
Mm-hmm. So, what do you think about the post-credit scene, the mid-credit scene?
The Venom stuff is weird. Doesn't make a lot of sense because we saw essentially the same scene at the end of Venom 2. Somewhat of a spoiler alert, but that he was because he's in Mexico in both of them, so it's still the same little chunk of time, but I think they're just leaving that open to, they're leaving the possibility to have their own Venom in the MCU and not have to have it be Tom Hardy if like the deals don't work out and stuff.
Right.
I think they're just insuring themselves. Him dropping the part of the goo, the symbiote in the MCU universe, ensures that there can be one of their own if they want to cast their own person. And some people were like, oh, why is Tom Hardy there? He didn't know who Spider-Man was or that he was Peter Parker. But my buddy, and I'll credit my buddy Dagan Briggs, a wrestler I know, he actually goes, no, they drop a line about how all the Venoms are connected as like a hive mind. So maybe even all the multiverse Venoms are connected in a hive mind, and there is a version of Venom that does know Peter Parker is Spider-Man. So Venom knows that Peter Parker is Spider-Man, not necessarily Tom Hardy. So I thought that was an interesting argument where you could stretch it and have it make sense because they're all connected like the Borg. They're all like a hive mind kind of a thing. So and they all kind of share information. So that makes sense. I think they're just leaving it open. They weren't committing to it to see because there's been this whole thing of like is the next couple of movies with Tom Holland is it going to be him and Venom doing something in the kind of the Sony universe? Is it going to be Venom coming into that? Is it going to be him doing another thing in the MCU? We don't know yet. They're still figuring all that out.
Right.
He's only contracted for one more official appearance in some movie. I'm assuming it'd be some kind of Avengers movie or something like that. But yeah, like we don't know yet. So we'll just have to see how it plays out. But I think they're just leaving things kind of open-ended on that and just seeing where it plays out. And I think they were just ensuring themselves where we can explain it one way or explain it the other way, depending on where it goes.
Yeah. I would have enjoyed it a lot more if it had just ended with Tom Hardy leaving and then they didn't show the goo. Like
the goo.
I don't know if the MCU needs a Venom or if they're just planning like this is their way of saying Spider-Man is leaving the MCU and will now strictly be a Sony property. Maybe that's
what I'm saying. They're just
yeah.
I think they're just leaving it open to where they can explain it or retcon it one way or the other, depending on how these deals work out. Because also with them doing this spell where everybody forgets, that's also a reset to where if he goes off to be in like the Sony verse and not the MCU, it doesn't matter because the MCU people have all forgotten he's Spider-Man anyways. So it doesn't matter. It's kind of a reset. So like Spider-Man can technically still be around, but he doesn't have to necessarily be part of the Avengers if the Avengers doesn't know Spider-Man is an Avenger, because that would be a thing, So I think they're just leaving it open and they can play it, go down either road, once they kind of settle everything. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. It's definitely intriguing which way they're going to go in the next movie. Whenever they get to the next movie. I mean, I know they're like, we're actively developing another movie. We won't know which direction they're going till they start talking about it. But yeah, it's all speculation at this point. But yeah, then the other thing wasn't really a scene. It was kind of a tease for Doctor Strange, which I believe the one they released today was pretty much the same thing, right? It was just what we've been getting officially. They just kind of officially put it out with like the new teaser for the multiverse. And people forget that Doctor Strange movie was supposed to come out before this movie, before Spider-Man. On the slate, they shuffled it around. So the whole thing was going to be they did this Doctor Strange movie, and that kind of introduced the idea of these multiverses, and they expanded on it more in Spider-Man, and now it's been kind of reversed. So now it's like Doctor Strange started playing around with this, and now they're going to play around with it more in this movie. So yeah, it's been a reversal. But yeah, that movie was supposed to come out first, and a lot of people forget that on the original slate. Till everything got shuffled around.
That could make some events in this movie seem.
Well, and that goes back to what I was talking about.
Yeah,
there are theories that there's a storyline in the comics involving Mephisto where he does something similar to to Spider-Man, where Spider-Man comes to him asking to sort of reset everything to where nobody knows. That he's Spider-Man and nobody knows, anything about him. And it's a deal with the devil type thing, which is what Mephisto is. And people were wondering, is it because Doctor Strange is acting kind of strange, pun intended, in this movie. He's not really acting like himself. He's a little too eager to just jump in and do this thing that's going to affect the entire world. It seems a little reckless. Wong's right. It's like, you shouldn't be messing with this stuff, man. Like on that scale, like this is dangerous stuff. Like this is almost like dark. This is dark magic type stuff. You know what I mean? Like you don't need to be doing this. And it seems out of line that he would just jump right into it, not thinking the consequences. But if there's ulterior motives, and that really wasn't Strange, that would make sense to kind of throw some things into chaos. To set some events, be careful what you wish for type thing, which is what Mephisto is all about. So it's interesting to theorize about that, if that was actually him or not, and there's been some theories. I mean, they're always, every time you see one of these shows come out, it's like, oh, is so-and-so actually Mephisto? Like, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, it's always shoehorned into nonsense. But this one makes the most sense because there's a comic storyline where it's very similar to what happens in this movie. Like, very, very similar. So if you look into it. So that one actually makes the most sense. But we'll see. It looks like we got kind of an evil Doctor Strange in that teaser. So, it's going to be interesting to see where it goes. It's going to tie into WandaVision a little bit, which is interesting with Wanda kind of showing up. But I'm really happy that Chiwetel Ejiofor is coming back as Baron Mordo. I want to see more of his character now that he's full villain now, doing his thing. I'd like to see something with Dormammu again, pop back in because he's still out there somewhere. But it'd be interesting to see what kind of surprises they have for this movie, and the fact that now that it's so ironic that now we've gotten this Spider-Man movie where we brought back Tobey, brought back Andrew, and now we've got this Doctor Strange movie directed by Sam Raimi, which people were forgetting is interesting, just as far as a kind of meta thing. Then now we're getting this movie right afterwards that's directed by the guy who did the original 3 Spider-Man movies. It's kind of interesting.
Yeah, we're supposed to get some horror vibes in this one too, so I'm excited for it. That teaser did a good job of teasing me, and I'm ready for May. I'm definitely ready for May. So yeah, it's gonna be. I think it'll be a good one. I'm excited for Wanda to come back, and it just looks good. Like it looks like it's gonna be visually pleasing as well. So yeah.
Well, I mean, they let Sam. If you remember back in like Spider-Man 2, you remember that scene where Doc Ock is still asleep, and they have that kind of very horror scene where the arms are like going after people in like the operating room, and people are using chainsaws and stuff, and it's real like Evil Dead. It's real similar, and they let him do that in that movie. I wonder if they'll let him do some stuff like that where it's not full on like blood and guts, people getting their heads chopped off kind of thing, but like he's able to do. I mean, people forget he did Drag Me to Hell, which was a PG-13 movie, and it's a very scary, like crazy movie, in a lot of different scenes. And he knows how to work with that in a non-R-rated scenario. He can still do those crazy horror scenes with a little bit of edge to him while still playing in that kind of safe world. So I hope they let him do that a little bit and play around with some of that stuff. I'd really like them to do that. We'll see.
Yeah, I think the MCU is headed in a good direction. I think they kind of plateaued with Black Widow, which was kind of it was a movie. I don't I
Yeah,
think I think it was only necessary to introduce Florence Pugh into the MCU, but I
yeah.
feel like they could have done that some other way. But Eternals doesn't sound like it sounds like it's very divisive. Um, we'll see. It comes out on Disney Plus in January, and that's probably where I'll watch it. I
I
thought
think
Shang Chi.
that one, maybe that one, someone just again, it exists, but it's also to kind of tease that there's these celestial beings out there. There's some other bigger
Mhm.
threats out there. There is Galactus out there somewhere. They could play around with later. If they needed another big bad on a Thanos level. Literally a planet eating celestial being, you know what I mean, is a pretty big threat. So,
Yeah.
that's the other one that people cite where it's like, well, you did Thanos, what do you do? Well, you do Galactus. And
Mhm.
they remember they teased Galactus in that those terrible Fantastic Four movies. Remember the second one they tried to do like
Oh,
Galactus, like this cloud thing, like just it was bad. No, and he actually kind of looks like him in this one. But yeah, like I guess that's again a direction they could go to get it out there. And regardless of whether the actual Eternals movie sticks or not, we'll see. But in the long run, but they can at least tease that stuff and then expand on it in other
hmm
films. Yeah, we'll kind of see. Like I still think the MCU is still kind of finding their way as far as what direction they want to go. Right now, they're in a
yeah.
weird spot where it's like they're trying to find that new thread of like that new track, a new train track of where we're going to go to our destination, because the original ones, once they knew they were going to head to the Infinity Gauntlet, to the Thanos stuff, we kind of knew
hmm
where we were heading long term and got there eventually. This one, I think they're still figuring out which way they really want to weave it and where they want to
Right.
go.
Which.
So, and they're having to play around with these new characters and kind of see what
hmm
sticks. So, and to be fair, Phase One, we didn't know what would stick with Phase One. And way back in the day, we didn't know if Iron Man was a flop, we wouldn't have what we have now. I
Right.
mean, realistically, because the Incredible Hulk could have still come out and they could have retconned that connection. You know what I mean? It might have just been dead in the water. We wouldn't have got all the rest of that stuff. So you never know what's going to stick and go long term, kind of until you do
Mhm.
it sometimes. So we'll see where they go.
Yeah, because they've put out a lot of content this year, but other
Hmm.
than that Black Widow Hawkeye, nothing really released this year feels connected. So
Yeah, it all kind of feel again. I think they're throwing a lot of stuff out there, throwing out some teases, seeing what makes the biggest splash, and then I think they leave enough stuff open to where whichever direction they decide to go, they can pull things from here, pull things from there, pull things from here, make things kind of connect, and
mhm.
then put things in a different context later. But again, I think they're just kind of doing some things and seeing what happens, because Endgame left everything in a weird spot where it's like it was such a big blow off that it's like, how do start over? It's not a reboot, but like, how do you know, get things going again to where you built and built and built and built and had Infinity War and an Endgame as this two-part kind of giant finale blow off it. Realistically, you could have ended it there. I mean,
Mhm.
I think you could have ended the MCU as we know it there and rebooted it again and started over again with something else. They
Yeah.
could have done that. I think it's very possible they could have done that. And gone off and still had characters here and there, but like basically said that the main story's over. But yeah, now it's like writing new chapters of a book you didn't know you were going to keep writing. So I hope they don't write themselves into corners. I hope they have some kind of plan in mind. The only reason I haven't gotten it, and this is a whole nother topic we'll talk about later, but I'll just say like the reason why I haven't really invested much in these TV shows is I don't know where it's going right now. So I don't feel like I
Mhm.
care that much to really invest myself in it. It's like they're
Right.
amusing, but I haven't really connected to them because it's like, all right, I just want to know how is this going to play into a bigger story and bigger
Mhm.
consequences. I just feel like it's just kind of putting out content right now for the sake of putting out content and just doing stuff. And I want to watch something more for just doing stuff. I wanted to go
Mhm.
somewhere.
Right.
Yeah. So that's all.
Right. Like I think starting off with WandaVision, I think was good because we now see where that's headed with the new Doctor Strange. But yeah, we have no idea where Falcon and Winter Soldier are going.
Hmm.
You know, um, where does I haven't watched much of Hawkeye. Where does Hawkeye go? Loki, like, where does
Yeah,
Loki go from? Because he's dead. Um,
yeah.
so like,
Well,
but
he's dead depending on which universe you follow or which train of
yeah,
events you follow. You know what I mean? So that's
right.
another kind of multiverse thing of like, well, he's alive in certain timelines, he's not alive in certain
Hmm.
timelines. And I know. I mean, I guess this is somewhat of a again spoiler alert, but I haven't watched it per se, but I know Kingpin is like showing up in Hawkeye now. So and so they're starting to tie in those previous shows, and we didn't even talk about Daredevil
Oh
showing up in
yeah.
No Way Home. I mean, we didn't even mention that, but yeah, that was big.
Um,
Him showing
how'd you
up.
do that? Well, I'm a really good
Yeah,
lawyer.
yeah, right. And we're just like, man,
Yeah.
we like you,
Was it,
Charlie Cox. You're a good man. But
was
yeah, the fact they're trying to weave that stuff that which they never said it wasn't a part of it. There's references to the MCU in those shows. I mean, they referenced the Hulk, they referenced Tony Stark, they referenced the Avengers, here and there. They referenced the Battle of New York. I mean, they were around for that stuff. They were in the background. They just never really fully acknowledged that they were. But yeah, now that uh, we can work. I would really like to see them work Matt Murdock more into it. Maybe
mhm.
not even, he doesn't even necessarily have to be like a buddy movie. Just, have him be around, and just be maybe a mentor to Spider-Man, maybe he's one of the people that he first confides in him, that who he is in his past, as a lawyer, the
Yeah.
confidentiality as a lawyer would make sense, and hey, maybe you can, have some advice for me, or, what can I do? Or, that sort of thing would be fun. And yeah, I mean, I'd like to see damn John Bernthal show back up as a Punisher in this universe too, man. You could do a
That'd be
lot with
great.
that stuff too. So we'll see what
Yeah.
happens, man. But I'm glad they're weaving that stuff kind of back into it as well. Like that's fun.
Yeah. And speaking of the TV shows, I wonder how much of What If will play into the multiverse.
Mm,
I wonder if that's why we got What If is we're gonna see some of those storylines play out in the
yeah.
multiverse. So yeah, it seems like like we said, there's a lot of content this year that hasn't really been connected, but
Well,
you
again,
know,
I hope if they do connect it eventually, then it would make more sense. Then you can go back and see the connections and kind of pick up the different things when we know where
yeah.
it's going. Much like how this movie put the other two Tom Holland movies that I wasn't big on into a broader context. And now
Mhm.
that if I go back and do a marathon in a day, boom, 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 like it'll play better as a whole. Now that I know where they ended up, much like
Right.
if you know where Infinity War and Endgame, kind of ends and everybody's arcs, you can go back to literally the beginning of the MCU and watch these movies and see and be like, oh, they pay that off later. That's cool. They pay this off
Hmm.
later and they drop this line, all the stuff that plays into character arcs or broader storylines, it puts things into a different context later. So I hope they get to that point because I
Yeah.
haven't been as interested in these TV shows or haven't had a lot of motivation to watch them, just because I just want to know what they're building to, and I just don't know what they're building to yet.
Right.
Yeah, I'm still rooting for it. I want it to be good. Nobody wants it to be bad.
No,
We want
no.
it to get to a good place and be bad. I want it to be good. Yeah, I just want to see where it's going, kind of in a bigger context for right now.
So yeah, I think we'll call it there. That was our
Yeah.
spoiler review of Spider-Man. I think this might be recency bias, but we did our Spider-Man rankings. You had ranked this. Was it third or fourth?
It was
Yeah,
third in my
third.
overall, and again, I'll see it again and kind of solidify that. I still have Toby's still my guy, and
Hmm.
Spider-Man 2 and the original Spider-Man just hold a special place in my heart still. But yeah, like this is easily my favorite of the Holland movies, like for sure. Yeah,
Mine, mine too. And if you remember, I had Far From Home at 2, which means
yeah,
No Way Home is going to
hmm,
overtake that, and I'm going to slide
sure.
No Way Home in at 2. I still have Spider Verse at 1, but that could
Mm,
definitely change. Um, and as far as the MCU goes, I think I don't know if it's top 5, but it's very close
I think
to
it's
the
going to
top 5
be,
for
and
me.
especially once it comes out on Blu-ray and people are really rewatching it and digging into it, I think you're going to see it pop up on a lot of top 5, top 10 lists, things like that, popping up. And it's cool because the last couple of movies, again, have not really hit those marks, those high marks. So the
Mhm.
fact that they were able to do another one that it's basically, Spider-Man Endgame. I mean,
Yeah,
it's very
basically,
similar.
yeah.
So yeah, so that's why people are digging it. But and the reason it's made so much money is it's really a love letter to Spider-Man and the fact that they were able to put some respect and not disrespect
Mhm.
Toby or Andrew, but to say that if you love these guys, you'll love them in this movie too. And it's not a thing of a dick measuring contest, essentially, of like our Spider-Man's better than your Spider-Man, like expect mine because like it's saying no, like those Spider-Men are awesome, and if you love them too, then here you go. Here's more of that, and they can all be their own thing and be great. And I like that they were able to do that. It wasn't just a we're going to bring them in and make fun of them or put the call them silly. You know what I mean? It's just like
Mhm.
we're just going to appreciate that all these different Spider-Men are fun. Everybody has their favorites, and that's totally cool. And we can just make a really good movie because it's
Yeah.
like a great It's like a great wrestling match, Jacob. We're both wrestling fans. It's like get the match over first, and then you can talk about the performances.
Mhm.
Cornette and Jim Cornette's always talking about get the match over first instead of just trying to get your shit in. Get your spots in. Get the match over first, and then people will appreciate the little pieces of everything. The ingredients. It's like get this. Let's make a great movie and put and get and everybody can get their spots in the movie, but let's make a great movie and then we can have fun analyzing the individual pieces.
Yeah.
That's key to it.
Yep. And I think they definitely made a great movie, one that I will revisit often, I'm sure.
Well, and I think it's going to be in theaters for a while because people are going to be
Yeah.
seeing this movie a lot in theaters.
Yes.
Even going forward, I think it's going to hang around. Which is why I'm not in a rush to get out there. It's going to be in theaters for a minute, so I think I'll have plenty of time to see it a second time or even a third time. So, yeah, it's going to be around, and people are going to be doing that much like they did with Endgame and stuff. Going back to the theater to experience that multiple times.
Hmm. And rightfully so, because I think it does deserve
Mm.
it. But yeah, that's been our spoiler review of Spider-Man No Way Home. We were going to talk Christmas movies because 'tis the season, but we've gone a little longer because
Maybe we'll just do a
Spider-Man.
quick, we'll just do a quick 5 minutes. Jacob, give me your couple of go tos. We'll just do our quick go
Hey,
tos.
yeah, we
What
can
do
do
what do
that.
we watch? What are some of our, we don't have to go in depth and do reviews of these movies. We'll just what are your go tos? What are your maybe your guilty pleasures or ones you just always revisit? We'll just do that really quick. 5-10 minutes,
There we go.
and then
There
we'll
we go.
wrap it up.
That
Yeah.
sounds good. So yeah.
Yeah.
So I
Because
always
I feel like, yeah, we talked Christmas movies on Tier Ranker and Tournament Fights recently on the other channel. Like we've talked Christmas movies to death, but maybe just our personal go tos, in our own life, what we always watch.
That's a good point. If you want to hear more about Christmas
Hmm.
movies, go over to the Movie Hero channel,
Hmm.
where Austin is on quite frequently,
Yeah.
and you can hear more. But yeah, my go-to. I always have to kick it off with Die Hard.
Hmm.
It's just not Christmas until you see Hans Gruber
Oh
falling
wait,
off a Nakatomi
Die
Plaza.
Hard is my favorite Christmas movie, like my shirt
Yeah,
says. Yeah.
and whether you think it is a Christmas movie or it isn't a Christmas movie, it's set at Christmas time, and for me, that's all it takes.
Hey,
So
there's nothing wrong with a great action movie set at Christmas time and where you can have a great action movie but also hear Christmas in Hollis by Run DMC. I mean, come on, who doesn't love
right,
that? That's fun.
if It's a Wonderful Life can be considered the greatest Christmas movie of all time, when less than half of
Yeah.
the movie is set at Christmas, Die Hard
Yes.
can be a Christmas movie too. Anyways,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, Die Hard. One of the more unconventional ones I go to is Gremlins. I love that movie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Um,
that's a lot of fun.
then I am a huge fan of the Santa Claus trilogy. I think Tim Allen
Mm-hmm.
was was great as Scott Calvin. I even enjoy parts of the third one. I know it's not the greatest, but I still
There's still
enjoy it.
it still has its moments. I
Yeah.
think Short is trying his hardest with the material he's given. I
Mm-hmm.
think he's at least trying to get something going. But I still like checking in with like Judge Reinhold and checking
Right.
in with, again, the side characters. I love the mythology they set up with the late great Art LaFleur as like the Tooth
Mm-hmm.
Fairy, and Aisha Tyler as like as Mother Earth, and
Yeah.
or and Worf is the Sandman, the other Sandman, the one that just puts you to sleep,
Yeah.
shit like I like the fact that they all kind of exist, and they because they introduced that in the second one, and that's still fun. I like that stuff a lot, like their little interactions with these kind of mythical, holiday characters. The
Mm-hmm.
fact that they kind of exist in this world is a lot of fun to me. I like that stuff.
Yeah. So I think if I had to do a top five,
Yeah.
I think I would go uh, Jim Carrey's The Grinch.
Hmm.
So some of it is a little cringy, but it's still I think it's fun.
Hmm.
Um, I would go the Santa Claus 2. I
Me
think
too. Yeah,
Clone
me too.
Clone Santa is fantastic.
Yeah.
I would go Klaus, the Netflix film. I think Klaus is amazing. Um, and then I would probably go the Santa Claus and then Die Hard. I love Die Hard, so I
Yeah.
think that would be my top five. I think.
Yeah, I think my top five would be something like, and not really in any particular order. I'd have to really sit down and do that. But like my go-tos are, every, I hang out with my family on Christmas. We put on the Christmas Story marathon, the 24 hours of Christmas. We don't watch it for 24 hours straight,
Right,
obviously, but it's
right,
one of our go-tos where we keep it muted, but we have it on, we flip it on while we're doing our morning things, you know what I mean? And once we're done with present stuff, we unmute it. We watch, wherever it's at. We just watch it. I mean, it's just a great, you feel Christmas in that movie. It's a
definitely.
whole thing. There's snow all over there. They're always doing prep for stuff, and yeah, it's just one where I can pop in at any time and be like, oh yeah, here's this scene, or here's that scene, and you can just pop in at any time and kind of have fun with it. Like you, I really like the Santa Claus 2. I think it's really really good. I love both the stuff going on at the North Pole with the clone Santa and how over the top he is, but it's intentional. Like he's so silly, just like you're all doing a wonderful job. All this stuff is great. How plastic he looks, but I even love the story between him and Elizabeth Mitchell and their little romance, movie
Yeah.
that they kind of have in the middle. Like it's really great. I love the stuff at the Christmas party. I think that Christmas party scene is so wonderful. Like where he does the Secret Santa thing and they're all playing with toys from their childhood. Like I just love that scene. I think it's really, really, really good. It's just excellent. So yeah, I like Santa Claus 2 a lot. Jingle All the Way is still a favorite of
Mm,
mine with Schwarzenegger. It's just a
mm-hmm.
lot of fun. It's a silly, batshit crazy movie, but like I can enjoy it for how just bonkers it is.
Yeah.
It's just a fun one of and a moment in time that we will never have again. Where we can't have a movie like that when people can pull out their phone. I could pull out my phone and pull up the Amazon app and just order something in 2 minutes off my
Right.
phone. We'll never have that time again where people were, you know, running over each other. I mean, we still get people occasionally on a Black Friday. Even that's starting to go away though.
Yeah. Yeah.
But like as far as like these manic crazes of the '90s where people were fighting each other for a toy, we just don't have that anymore. Um,
And it's got one of the greatest lines in cinema history. Put the cookie down.
Put that cookie down now. I even like the one before that where she's like, "Who told you could eat my cookies?" Just like, all these cookies are. Oh, that I mean, it's so great. I love that movie. But yeah, Die Hard is another staple. You have to watch Die Hard at least once. And I was actually able to see it in a theater at Christmas time 2 or 3 years ago at a theater up
Mm,
here in Asheville. Both
nice.
that and A Christmas Story, I was able to see both in the theater, and it's just fun seeing it with people who were as passionate about that movie too. When I saw A
Yeah.
Christmas Story in the theater, which I had never done, with people who were just as passionate about that movie, quoting the lines along with the movie and cheering at all the right times, and just laughing and having a good time. Like it just makes it all confirms what other people love this movie as much as I do. And yeah, I think the original Santa Claus is a lot of fun too. I think Tim Allen is really great, and has some good drama in that, near the end. But I even just love all the silly stuff at the beginning, where, with him, not believing it and just making fun of everything and thinking it's all a dream. Like all that stuff is a lot of fun. So yeah, those are definitely kind of my go-tos. I love other stuff like, things that are growing on me, like the Night Before is a lot of fun with Seth Rogen. Really, really fun movie that's starting to kind of work its way into my rewatches. Christmas Vacation is one of those movies that like I came to it late, so I don't have that connection to it. But it's one of those ones where like on Christmas Day, when I'm at my parents, they have cable. So if you flip around cable, some station has the Santa Claus movies on all day. They're running all those. AMC or somebody is running Christmas Vacation all day. You obviously have the Christmas Story marathons. One of the family channels will be running Jingle All the Way, and things like that. You can flip around and see all those movies. The TCM will run It's a Wonderful Life. Whatever you want to watch, all the staples, they're around and they're all good. I like them all. They're all just fun. The only things I don't get into is all those goofy Hallmark Christmas movies. I'm not into those. Yeah, I don't do that. I know people do, and that's fine if that's your thing. Cool. I just don't get involved in all those, but I get why people do.
I can't believe I forgot to mention it, but Muppets Christmas Carol. Absolutely.
Oh yeah, definitely. If you're gonna watch one version of A Christmas Carol, yeah, I just think that one has a little bit for everybody, because you have the stuff with the Muppets for the kids, which is fun, and they have their silly stuff, but like the songs are genuinely good. The way they interact with, the way those Muppet movies you just accept the world that there's these people, there's these Muppets, they all kind of live together. It just is, it's this world, kind of like a Roger Rabbit type of scenario. But Michael Caine is like, fuck that it's a Muppet movie. I'm going to give an Oscar performance here and just be Scrooge in this, I'm acting against Muppets. You know what I mean? Like acting with Kermit the Frog, and I'm going to give the best, like that Michael Caine knows he's in a Muppet movie, but he's like, screw it, I'm gonna give an amazing performance and be the best Scrooge that's ever been, and he's awesome. Like if you haven't gone back and watched that movie, Michael Caine, like he does not give a shit that it's a Muppet movie. He's gonna go out and give the best performance that he can possibly give, So he's great, and he makes that movie. He elevates it even more than what it is. It's awesome.
Yeah, I think that's been our show. I think we'll call it here. I think it's been a good one. Let us know in the comments what your favorite Christmas movies are, and tell
what's
us how
your
you
favorite
feel.
moment. What was your favorite moment from Spider-Man? What got you the feels? What was your favorite character interactions or lines? And all that kind of stuff. Yeah, let us know what you thought of the movie and what you're looking forward to in the MCU as well. What do you think's coming? Are they going to do Galactus? I don't know. Are they going to, what TV shows are you looking forward to? Yeah, I mean, we almost neglected to mention Matt Murdock, but yeah, that was one of the great moments of the movie too. So almost, but yeah, but there's so many great moments that we almost forgot about that. So yeah, that's how good the movie is.
Yes, definitely great fan service. So yeah, let us know in the comments your thoughts on Spider-Man, your favorite moments. Let us know your favorite Christmas movies. And check out. I always do this wrong. I always forget which finger to put up. Be sure to check out Austin over on the Movie Hero Network, their YouTube channel. Lots of good stuff over there. Tier ranker fights, tournament fights.
And one other show I started, if I may, Jacob. And again, I'm always appreciative of anybody who just gives me a forum to just yap about movies and talk, because I just love talking movies. And you were gracious enough to give me that opportunity, and I appreciate it. We've had some fun so far. But Henry Confidential, Henry Sanchez over there, we've started a ranking show called Let's Rank Stuff. And we've had some fun so far. We did our first episode is live. It was about the Rocky franchise, including the Creed movies, obviously, where we just, we're both big fanboys of the Rocky franchise. So it's an hour and a half of us just ranking and geeking out over the Rocky franchise. And so that was a lot of fun. And then we just recorded a new episode. It'll be going up again, probably Sunday, probably after Christmas. But we did Tarantino movies, and so we had we had some similar rankings, but we had a couple of radically different ones. But it was another great conversation about us geeking out over the Tarantino verse, or whatever you want to call it. His world that he sets up in those movies. So I think we're gonna have a format where we bounce back and forth from like a director to a franchise to a director to a franchise or a subgenre, because we're going to be doing, just a little preview. We're going to be doing the Saw franchise because we're both big fans of the Saw franchise, and we're going to do Rambo. We're going to do David Fincher movies, probably even James Cameron movies, and Christopher Nolan, things like that. So we're going to be having a lot of fun over there. Just an informal. We don't have a set thing of like, no disrespect to Malcolm Lay's top 12 rank him. He does his thing, and then I've been on the show and it's a lot of fun. But we're just ranking, like, we don't have a hard number. It's just whatever we want to rank. Rocky had like 8 movies. Tarantino had 9. We're just gonna pick a topic and just do a thing. So, and just have a little fun with it. So we're just a loosey goosey. Let's just kind of have some fun with it and talk. It's been really fun so far. We got some good chemistry, and I'm happy to be doing that. But right now it's about a podcast about movies. Yeah, we had a good 2 episodes so far. We're going to keep rolling, and we'll figure out what we're going to talk about next time. I'm sure we'll figure that out in the interim.
Yes. I pitched talking Matrix, but with the reviews, I don't know. I don't even know if I want to check that one out right now. But
we could still talk about it. We could still talk about it. It would be a discussion. I have not watched it yet. I have read all the reactions. I have HBO Max, so I can watch it. I was going to go see it in the theater, and I was really hyped to go see it in the theater. But now I'm like, oh, should I just leave it for the home experience, I guess, and not make because with me, it's a whole thing. I got to get on this highway out here and go to the theater, and it's always a slow down. I'm like, maybe I should just stay home and watch it. But we can still talk the franchise in general and our least favorite moments, and talk about the whole franchise as a whole, including the new one. So it's very possible we could do that still. I think it would still be an interesting discussion, even if it is bad. What went wrong? What we would have done better?
There we go.
Where we would have gone. Why the first one still holds up, and why the other ones just can't reconnect that magic. I mean, there's always something to talk about with that. So we could do that.
So there we go. We've got the topic for next week. We'll talk.
We'll talk some Matrix as a whole, not just. We'll get into Resurrections and maybe give a spoiler right there. We'll probably talk about that, but we'll talk the franchise as a whole, our favorite and least favorite movies of the series and moments, and the mythology of everything, and where it can go wrong and where it goes right. We'll talk about everything like that.
So make sure you tune in for that, and please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel.
Yeah, subscribe to the channel, please. Hit that, as the kiddies say nowadays, smash that subscribe button, hit that melee button. Yeah, let's and help Jacob out. We want to get him some subscribers, and we're all a big family here in the in this community, so we all support each other. Let's all support each other's shows and just embrace our love of movies. So that's what this is all about. Just us geeking out over movies and just having a little fun.
Right, and let me know. Do you like it being pre-recorded? Or do you want us to do it live sometimes? Let me know, because I am not against that.
I'm not against that either. If you want us to go live, and or even a mix of both. Maybe some pre-recorded. Maybe if there's something that's hot that we want to talk about live, and have you guys chime in the chat, and throw some comments up there. We're open to that too. Or do a special live episode every now and then, and get you guys involved. Let us know. What do you want us to do?
Because a little behind the scenes, I told Austin I wasn't going to set a time to record, but so far the first 2 have been the same day and the same time. So who knows? Yeah, maybe this is our time.
Maybe it just is our time. It's the same thing with Henry over on the Let's Rank stuff. It's like we don't really have a set thing, but it's kind of ended up being Wednesday nights at 9:00, or 8:00. So it just kind of is what it is, and it works around everybody's schedule. But or do you want us to do a mix of both? Maybe we do a live one once a month, and the other ones are pre-recorded depending on the topic, or whatever. You let us know. Give us some feedback.
Let us know. Make sure you're checking out Austin with all the stuff he's doing. Check us out. A podcast about wrestling will be coming soon. My co-host for that is just a little busy around the holidays, apparently.
Yeah.
Whatever.
What's all this job stuff and all these real world things? What's that going on? But I'm looking forward to tuning into that, Jacob. You and Jordan Owens doing your thing over on a podcast about wrestling. Like I said, hopefully every now and then you can get into some old school topics too. I'll be interested in that. So and talk to some favorite matches and things. So that'd be fun. I'm looking forward to that.
I am looking forward to that as well. This has been a fun time again. Check out Austin. Check this out and keep talking about movies.